that some of you will attend it. Now I'm going to just introduce this evening's speaker, who is Leon Marais. I think most of you probably know Leon. He's one of the co-founders of Lawson's Birding Wildlife and Custom Safaris. I don't know about you, but I've seen their logo often when I'm in places like Kruger and so on. And Leon is a published author. He's written a lot in magazines about birding. He's run tours in South Africa and other parts of the world. He's done plenty of talks at bird fairs and so on, both locally and internationally. And I think he's going to give us a really exceptional webinar this evening about his favorite place to go birding, which is in Eastern South Africa. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Leon. Leon, over to you. I will just stop sharing my video, and I will go on mute so as not to make noise while you're speaking.
Right, thank you, Derek. Thanks so much for that introduction. And hello, everyone. A warm welcome from me, and thanks for tuning into this Learn the Birds webinar. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to talk about birds and birding in Eastern South Africa. I think Derek did the introduction, so I'll skip the little introduction to myself that I was going to say. But basically, I'll just pick up on the end point, which is that I really think this part of the country's got a lot to offer. And I hope you'll appreciate that by the time we get to the end, if you don't already or haven't visited this part of the world. Right, so even though I've narrowed the focus of this to include only a part of South Africa, as seen in this slide, basically that rough area in the red shape there, there's still a lot of ground and plenty of bird species to cover. So this is by no means an exhaustive account. These birding routes are basically itineraries we put together for international birders. One could go into a lot more detail, but time and concentration spans are limited. So obviously, international birders have limited time, and these routes are built around specific goals of seeing key species and large numbers of more widespread species and some key areas, all within a limited time frame. So local birders may raise hands or eyebrows at least if I fail to mention this or that spot for this or that bird. But please bear in mind that the aim of the webinar is just to introduce the region, some of its key species, and some general birding routes that work well for us at least. So before we talk about the routes, a quick introduction to South Africa from a birding perspective. The total number of species may be up for a bit of a debate depending on the taxonomic system one uses, but it's over 700 species. It was 741 according to a list based on the IOC version 10.2 I generated recently on the iGoTerra system. But that's excluding all vagrants. If you factor in the vagrants, it's well over 800 species. I think it was 851 as at April 2020 according to fatbirder.com. And I see the rare bird alert came in today about a sooty gull seen in St. Lucia. So that species looks to be like it's from East Africa. I'm not sure if it's been recorded in South Africa before, but that could be a new one, which is quite exciting. So that's not a bad total by any means. It's not as high as other African countries, such as Kenya, for example, which has a list of over 1,000 species. But you can see from this eBird map, the red cluster within that sort of black circle there down our way, which shows the high number of species. It's 300 plus in parts of the range, even going up to 500 or 600. So that's pretty good, but it's species numbers aside, it's really the endemics and the near-endemics that are what makes South Africa so special as a birding destination. Now, the exact numbers depend on the consideration of two tiny little landlocked countries. That's Lesotho and Eswatini, which used to be called Swaziland, that are totally or partially within South Africa. Now, I generally don't consider these when talking about South African endemics. So South African endemic species may also occur in one or both of these small territories. The current bird life South Africa list includes 38 endemics. Again, that's including Lesotho and Eswatini, and 30 near-endemics, plus one breeding endemic, making for 69, a total of 69 very unique species to be seen within South Africa. And in terms of fully South African endemics, in other words, species that don't occur in either Lesotho or Eswatini, the figure is 18. And of course, most of those are going to occur down in the Cape Province in totally different habitat. So in terms of how South Africa ranks in comparison to the rest of the continent, in his excellent book, The Birder's Guide to Africa, Michael Mills does a comprehensive comparison of all countries, islands, and territories that are part of Africa, including Madagascar, and that's based on the needs and wants of different types of birders. As you can see in the table, South Africa ranks number 2 for world listers after Madagascar, and that's because of our endemics and near endemics. Obviously, world listers, that's their main goal, is to see all the endemics and near endemics in an area. Then we rank first for balanced, leisure, and budget birders. Budget birders, he says, are basically like world listers, but on a bit of a shoestring, whereas balanced and leisure birders have other wants and needs like nice accommodation, safety, other attractions, etc. So we only fall short in the 4th category, which is explorer birders, as South Africa has been birded very well over time, and there's not much, if any, new territory left to explore. So basically, the takeaway from all this is that it's an all-round superb birding destination. Right, so with that in mind, let's start with our first route, which we call Eastern South Africa Highlights, Part 1, Drakensberg and Zululand, covering some of the best of KwaZulu-Natal province. Now, one of the main physical features of the province is the Drakensberg mountain range. Some of the peaks in the range break the 3,000 meter above sea level mark, and it's located only around 170 kilometers from the Indian Ocean coast as the crow flies. So this altitude variation over a relatively short distance makes for some fantastic habitat diversity. And that's a key point for all of the routes I'll talk about. Each region is very diverse in its own way. Right, so the logical starting point on this is King Shaka International Airport near Durban. And our first destination is Orobi Gorge in the Greater South Coast area. Now, this gorge on the Mzimkhulwana River presents some lovely riparian forest habitat, holding a variety of forest species such as the exquisite Neisner turco, Narina trogon, scaly-throated honeyguide, lemon dove, grey cuckoo shrike, yellow-throated woodland warbler, brown scrub robin, chorister robin chat, white-starred robin, African emerald cuckoo in summer, and African crowned eagle, which are all typical forest species of Eastern South Africa. The main target species here, however, is the endemic Neisner woodpecker. This lovely little species is restricted to the southeast coast of South Africa. And here at the gorge, if you can see the map there, the top cluster of colored squares in the Port Shepstone area. So here we're at the very northern end of its range, meaning that we'll only have one shot at it on this route. So it's quite an important bird. Other endemics and specials to look out for here include Cape vulture, southern chagra, bush blackcap, forest canary, African finfoot on the river with a bit of luck, as well as half-collared kingfisher. All right, moving on from the south coast, our next stop is in the southern Drakensberg in the Heimwil-Underberg area. And the prime birding spot here, of course, is Sani Pass, offering a fantastic day out and some incredible birding all around. So here we'll use the services of a local guide such as Stuart McLean of Birds and Beyond, who firstly has the 4x4 vehicles needed for the pass. When we're traveling, we're not really traveling in 4x4s. And secondly, has the up-to-date local knowledge of the birds and the incredible summer wildflowers as well, if you're interested. So the altitude ranges here are significant. It ranges from about 1,600 meters at the bottom of the pass to well over 3,000 meters on some of the peaks within Lesotho. And the top of the plateau, which falls in Lesotho, is made up of an alpine heath-like vegetation type. That's shown in the bottom right-hand picture there. And there are several species of birds that have the edge of the plateau here as the easternmost limit of their ranges. So starting at the bottom of the pass, key species to look out for on the ascent include Barrett's warbler, very tricky bird to see. Bush blackcap, a lovely little endemic, a little bit more responsive. Redneck spurfowl. Gurney's sugarbird, of course, one of only two sugarbird species, the other one being the Cape sugarbird. Buff street chat. Ground woodpecker, a very unusual ground-dwelling woodpecker species. Cape rock thrush and Cape grassbird, among others. Then close to the top of the pass, as we approach the Lesotho border post, we'll look out for two of the day's main targets. That's Drakensberg siskin, one of only two in the genus, the other being the Cape siskin, of course, and the endemic Drakensberg rock jumper, which is arguably one of the top birds for the entire route. And it's one of only two members of the family Chaetopidae, the other being the Cape rock jumper, of course. So a very important bird, that. Now, once we're on the plateau within Lesotho, we'll look out for the likes of fairy flycatcher, Layard's warbler, sickle-wing chat, large-billed lark, southern grey tit, yellow canary, and Karoo prinia, which are all species more typical of the southwestern parts of the country. Now, the enigmatic mountain pipit is another sought-after species seen on the plateau, usually seen in winter or spring, while African rock pipit can also be found on the high peaks. Other notables include the magnificent lammergeier, always lovely to see, southern bald ibis, Vero's eagle, Cape vulture, jackal buzzard, and others. So there's a lot to keep one busy with on this day trip. It's really a highlight, one of the highlights of the tour. And in the general area, that's the area known as the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. There are another two very important birds to see, namely blue swallow and Cape parrot. The former, the blue swallow, is a scarce summer migrant visiting us from the highlands of East and Central Africa and can be seen at High Over Nature Reserve and the Hela Hela Pass, or in local farmlands under the guidance of a local guide such as Malcolm Gemmell of Button Birding, who can also help with a Cape parrot, which is found in the local forest patches. And once again, the local knowledge, and in this case, the access to private land, is indispensable. All right, so moving on from the Drakensberg, we'll drive to Eshowe near the coast. We'll go via the Kruger, the lovely Kruger Valley, where all three crane species can be seen. That's blue, grey-crowned, and wattled cranes. Cranes always nice to see. In Eshowe itself, our main birding venue is Glinza Forest, and our two prime targets here are spotted ground thrush and eastern bronze-nape pigeon. Now, you'll find the thrush by walking slowly and quietly through the forest, looking for it and listening for it, rummaging through the leaf litter, while the pigeon is best seen from the canopy tower in the early mornings. That's up there, when they may spend some time preening in the dead trees sticking out above the canopy before they set off to feed. They often take a coffee basket up there to help while away the time while we wait for the elusive pigeon to show itself. Then on the edge of the forest, there's also a neat little bird hide from which one can see lemon dove. That's a very tough species to see, otherwise it's extremely shy, as well as tambourine dove, green twin spot, and redback manakins feeding on the seeds put out by the staff. And of course, one wouldn't mention Eshowe without mentioning some of the excellent local guides down there, such as Sakamuzi Mhlongo and Jota Maduna, who know the area and the birds very well. They can help you with the green barbet in the Ongoye forest. This is subspecies woodwardy, which is recognizable by the yellow wash on the side of the face. This is a very interesting species, as the population here is totally isolated And the only other population of this subspecies occurs on the Rondo Plateau in southeastern Tanzania. That's some distance away. So a very interesting and important bird, that. And the local guides can also help you with other species in the area, such as black kukul, palm-nut vulture, and mangrove kingfisher in nearby Mtanzini. Here in this slide, we're scoping out black kukul with Sakamuzi. If you're wondering what the folks at the van are doing, we stumbled into a patch of tenacious burrs, so they're busy deburring themselves after having seen the bird. So moving on, after Eshawi and Mtanzini, our next stop is St. Lucia and the Isimangaliso Wetland Park. Isimangaliso means place of wonder. It's a World Heritage Site, and it's a wonderful area, one of my favorite birding sites in the country, offering a large number of and a wide range of species, and lots of activities, from car-based birding to numerous forest trails and boat trips on the estuary. So a lot to do there and a lot to see. The Southeast African specials are our prime targets here. These include Livingston's Turco, Rudza Palis, Woodward's Batis, pink-throated twin spot, southern banded snake eagle, green malkoa is a real skulker, not easy to get good views of, lemon-breasted canary, rufous-winged testicular, and brown scrub robin. Other great species in the area include rosy-throated longclaw, which is not common, admittedly, but they are there sometimes. I found this one by call last year in November in the Cape Vidal area. I'm going to play the call now. I heard this call and I looked in that direction, and this most vibrant pink color just showed up so terrifically from the grassland. Sorry, there's a bit of wind noise here, but you might pick up the call of this species. Okay, if you've heard that, that's a lovely bird to see. Some other species we'll look for in the area include African cuckoo hawk, Narina trogon. I think St. Lucia is one of the best areas in the country for Narina trogon. Grey waxbill, grey sunbird, eastern golden weaver, southern brown-throated weaver, white-eared barbet, swamp nightjar, black-throated wattle-eye, gorgeous bushshrike is always terrific to see. Eastern nickiter, of course, always easier to hear than to see. And white-backed night heron, which you can sometimes see on the boat cruises if the guides know where they're roosting, and numerous others. Then on the waterbird side, there can be some really good wader watching at the St. Lucia estuary mouth. You never know what you may find. Crab plover, sooty tern, gull-billed tern, and lesser frigate bird. And of course now what sounds like sooty gull are some of the local rarities seen there in the past. Okay, moving on from St. Lucia, we'll head up to the northern part of the province on the border with Mozambique. And our next stop, or our stop here, is Tembe Elephant Park. Now the prime habitat type here is a dry broadleaf forest known as sand forest, which holds some lovely birds. Now there's quite a bit of overlap with St. Lucia in terms of species, and there are other reserves in the area such as Mkuzi, which also have good sand forest habitat. But the Tembe area is the only place in the country to see plain-backed sunbird. And it's also a great place to see the curious African broadbill, which is best seen between October and February. Here in this slide, we're having a coffee stop in a productive patch of sand forest while we listen out for the broadbill and the plain-backed sunbird. And of course, near-guard sunbird is also an important Southern African endemic species to look out for here. It's also an inhabitant of the dry sand forest. But moving on from Tembe, our route takes us westwards into southern Mpumalanga province and Wakkerstroom, which is part of the grassland IBA, or important bird area, and one of South Africa's premier endemics birding spots. There's quite a list of specials for this locality, and here the services of a local guide such as Lucky Ngwenya or Norman Nkube are vital, as there's a lot of ground to cover, and some of the target species can be nomadic. It's hard to choose, but in terms of scarcity, I guess boerters and Rudd's larks are probably the top 2 species for the area, even though there aren't that much to look at, being small brown larks. But they're very important birds with estimated global populations of less than 5,000 individuals per species and total ranges of less than 500 square kilometers. Okay, other top species for the area include yellow-breasted pipit, ground woodpecker, blue crane, or a stunning bird, our national bird, always lovely to see, blue korhaan, white-bellied bustard, bush blackcap, sentinel rock thrush, grey-winged francolin, black harrier, southern bald ibis, eastern long-billed lark, cloud cisticola, and others. And it's also a great place to see the widespread but uncommon secretary bird. Then the Wakkerstroom wetland on the edge of town is a fantastic wetland birding spot for a variety of ducks and other waterfowl, waders, herons, and egrets, bishops, weavers, warblers. Grey-crowned crane is often present in the wetland area, as well as African marsh harrier, African rail, red-chested flufftail with a bit of luck and perseverance, and numerous others. Okay, so that'll be the last stop on this route before we finish up back in Johannesburg, with upwards of 350 bird species on the books and some just wonderful birding behind us. So sorry, I'm just going to have a sip of water here. Right, and that takes us on to our second route, Eastern South Africa highlights number 2, Escarpment and Kruger. And for me, this main slide here just captures the essence of the Kruger route with that fantastic bird component, those white-backed vultures coming down to a cheetah kill. So the combination is just wonderful. So it's one of my favorite routes. It can be done in only 8 or 9 days. And again, there's so much variety in a relatively small area. Most of it takes place in the Mpumalanga province. And again, the Drakensberg range creates some wonderful altitudinal diversity. It's not as high here as it is in KwaZulu-Natal. I think it just breaks about the 2,200 meter mark. And of course, there's no access to the sea within the province, but parts of the Kruger in the east of Mpumalanga are only about 200 meters or so above sea level, such as that bottom right slide in the Satara area. So starting in Johannesburg, we usually kick off with the morning in Rietvlei Nature Reserve, about 30 minutes out of the airport, just between the airport and Pretoria. This provides a good introduction to first-timers as it helps settle the nerves, as the keen birders can get into lifers almost straight away, rather than sitting in a car for the first few hours trying to bag lifers at 120 kilometers an hour. We all know what it's like being in a new area. You just want to start seeing the birds rather than travel. Northern black korhaan is by no means an uncommon species, but it's a bit of a special here, considering that our route takes us eastwards and out of the range of this species, as well as a few others, such as chestnut-vented warbler and greater kestrel. So these are always on our target list here. Our first proper overnight stop is in Dalstroom in the Mpumalanga highlands. This is between 2,000 and 2,200 meters above sea level. That main slide there shows the habitat in the Verloren Vallei or Lost Valley Nature Reserve, where we do most of our birding. The habitat here is mainly montane grassland, and there's quite a bit of overlap with Wakkerstroom in terms of species, although Dalstroom doesn't have quite the number of endemics. It doesn't have the Boerter's lark or the blue korhaan, for example, but it's still a great birding venue, and it ties in very well on this route. Species we'll be looking out for here include yellow-breasted pipit, buff-streaked chat, mountain wheatear, sentinel rock thrush, Gurney's sugarbird, southern bald ibis, Drakensberg prinia, Cape vulture, Jacob buzzard, Denham's bustard, cuckoo finch at times, and with some luck, all 3 species of cranes, although unfortunately the wattled crane especially is very scarce in that area. There's also a Cape eagle owl stakeout on the edge of town, just outside Dalstroom town, but I personally haven't had luck there in a while. But I guess it's always worth a shot, as Cape Eagle Owl is a lovely bird to get onto the list. So leaving Dahlstrom, our next stop is at Mount Sheba for either just a morning's birding, or if we have the time, an actual overnight stop. The habitat we'll focus on here is Afro-montane forest, which makes for some difficult birding, to be honest. You've got low light conditions, you've got reduced visibility with all the foliage, and the fact that it's not teeming with birds. It's not like a tropical forest, and the birds often move around in mixed flocks. So you can go for a while seeing nothing, you can be dead as a doornail, and then suddenly you're inundated with new species as you come across a feeding party. But there's some great birds to be seen. Top species include the exquisite Nias naturico, as well as Narina trogon, orange ground thrush, chorister robin-chat, the real songster, white-starred robin, Cape Batis, lemon dove, olive bushshrike on the forest edge, southern double-collared sunbird, yellow-streaked greenbull, grey cuckoo shrike up in the forest canopy, olive woodpecker, and a number of others. So some great birds overall, and the habitat is just so different to that at Dahlstrom, which is only a couple of hours away by car. And on the road into and out of Mount Sheba, in the rocky grassland and forest edge habitats, we'll look for species such as southern chugra, Gurney's sugarbird, which is usually associated with flowering proteas, wailing cisticola, redneck spurfowl, blackwing lapwings, and some others. But from there, we'll make our way through to the Blader River Canyon in the northern arm of the Drakensberg range. It's reportedly the third largest canyon in the world. It's an incredibly scenic area where you have a convergence of several habitat types, such as upland grassland, bushveld, riverine forest, and of course, plenty of rocky cliffs and gorges. This makes for a great range of birds, though there are not many species here that we won't see at other stops on the route. It also offers a chance to do some birding on foot, and a morning walk in the resort grounds can be extremely productive. Species we focus on here include white-throated robin-chat, mountain wagtail on the streams, striped pipit, which is often found on the lawns in front of the restaurant or around the chalets, Cape rock thrush, swee waxbill, greater double-collared sunbird, yellow-fronted tinkerbird, southern bald ibis. There's a small nesting and roosting place within the resort grounds, white-necked raven, Cape Batis, and even Vero's eagles at some of the canyon viewpoints, although they aren't a sure thing by any means, unfortunately, and a number of other birds. So after the canyon, we'll make our way slowly towards the Kruger National Park, with a stop en route at the Taita falcon nesting site on the Abel Erasmus Pass. Now, as most local birders will know, unfortunately, the sightings of this very small and thinly distributed falcon are not guaranteed anymore, like they pretty much used to be a number of years ago. There was a pair that present there up till about 2012, I think it was, and one of the pair disappeared. And ever since there, they've been a lot more erratic. But it's still worth a stop, and the local site guide, Michael Kamako, is still on site to help you find it if they're there. If you miss the falcon, you may well see some other worthwhile species, such as Cape vulture, Veros, and African crowned eagles. In the past, we've had some fantastic raptor watching there. In this slide, Michael, the site guide, is helping the clients get onto an African crowned eagle that was perched up in a big tree. So moving on, we then hit the Kruger National Park. On this route, we usually enter at Orpin Gate for 2 nights at Satara. Then moving southwards, we'll have 2 nights at Skukuza and a final night at Pretorius Corp. Now, the Kruger is worth a full webinar on its own. It covers close to 20,000 square kilometers. It's roughly the size of Wales or Israel, to put it into perspective. It has over 500 recorded bird species, plus, of course, the excitement of the big game. So I'm just going to give the briefest of overviews here. We're starting off in the Satara area. This area offers some classic sort of open plains country, which I guess is what most people think of when they think of Africa. And some of our target species in this area include Corey bustard, reportedly the heaviest flying bird in the world, though some say it ties with great bustard on that score. As well as common ostrich, no competition there, is the largest bird on the planet. Chestnut-backed sparrowlark, monotonous lark, which can be abundant during wetter periods. Secretary bird, which is always a sought-after species on most birding tours. Desert cisticola, Hemmings corsa, and in summer, montagues and pallid harriers, and a number of other species. It's also a good area in which to find the impressive Vero's eagle owl. If you scan the big trees lining the riverbeds and the stands of mature leadwood trees, you often get lucky with a sighting of this impressive species with those fantastic bare pink eyelids. And on the smaller end of the scale, and of course present throughout the park, not just in the Satara area, some careful scanning of knobthorn and bush willow trees in particular can sometimes turn up roosting southern white-faced owls, which are always lovely to see. And as with all the camps in Kruger, Satara camp itself can provide some good birding as well. And two species worth mentioning are African scops owl, which is unfortunately also not as reliable as in the past. Many people will be familiar with the reception birds, as they were called, that could usually be found roosting by day somewhere near the shop and reception car park. They seem to have disappeared. I'm not sure why exactly, though the species can often be tracked down by ear in the camp at night if you haven't managed to find a roosting specimen. And of course, morning collared dove, which people don't really get too excited about great doves generally, but this species is rare outside the camp unless you go much further north in the park. Of course, now there are plenty of other species to be seen. It's just too many to mention, really. From a staggering array of raptors, that's 45 diurnal species, excluding any vagrants, ranging in size from the little sparrowhawk, which is no bigger than a dove, to the mighty martial eagle, one of Africa's most powerful birds of prey, and the equally impressive lappet-faced vulture, to a vast range of bee-eaters, rollers, kingfishers, hornbills, shrikes, sunbirds, all these charismatic species, as well as common species that are actually South African or Southern African endemics or near-endemics. So it's literally a birders paradise, and it has the four-legged creatures as well, keep the kids and the non-birding spouse happy. So it's got something for everyone. From Satara, moving southwards, our next camp is Kruger, which is more well-wooded and has the perennial Sabi River flowing west to east through the area. And species we'll look out for here include white-crowned lapwing, which is an exposed riverbank or sandbank specialist, Goliath heron, the largest heron in the world, African jacana, African finfoot with a bit of luck on the river, giant kingfisher, white-browed robin-chat, and bearded scrub robin. Those last two are best seen in the camp itself, and a whole lot of others. Again, no really unique species that you won't see elsewhere, but overall just super birding. So moving on from Skukuza, we head southwestwards to the Pretorius-Kop area in the southwestern corner, which offers a broadleaf woodland habitat component with the iconic koppies or rock outcrops sticking up everywhere, and as such holds a number of birds that aren't seen as easily in other parts of the park. These include green-capped and yellow-bellied aeromomelus, dark-chanting goshawk, lizard buzzard, yellow-throated petronia, which is now called yellow-throated bush sparrow, striped kingfisher, which is a small and relatively dull little kingfisher, bushveld pipit, which is a lovely pipit. It's actually quite well marked for a pipit, pale flycatcher, croaking cisticola, grey penduline tit, and others. While the campgrounds, walk around in the campgrounds, can be good, can produce the likes of purple-crested turco, brown-headed parrot, scarlet-chested sunbird, red-headed weaver, and others. So that'll wrap up our Kruger experience, though of course one could easily spend much more time there, a lot more time. You can really never get bored in the Kruger. And from there, we'll drive back to Johannesburg with perhaps a couple of stops at various pans on the Highveld. That term Highveld, if you're not familiar with it, refers to the higher altitude regions between Johannesburg and the Escarpment to the east. Here, we'll try to add waterbirds to the list, as the Kruger doesn't usually have many species of waterfowl. I'm talking about ducks specifically. It's a bit sparse in that regard. And by the time we drop our tour participants off, we could have seen 330 or more bird species during midsummer. And that's only in 8 or 9 days. So it's truly a terrific route. I can wholeheartedly recommend it. And I think it's a superb introduction to South Africa for first-time visitors. It's got a bit of everything. So our third and our final route is what we call Northern South Africa highlights, Limpopo Valley and Kruger. That main slide there, if you're wondering, shows one of the fantastic fever tree forests in the far north of the Kruger. Very special area, which we'll get to shortly. Okay, this tour takes place mostly in Limpopo province. And again, it's a wonderfully diverse area with several mountain ranges such as the Soutpansberg and the Volkberg. Those two are actually biodiversity hotspots, as well as the Waterberg in the west, and of course the Drakensberg system in the east. And in the east of the province, there's the moist savanna of the Kruger National Park, relatively moist, and in the west, the arid savanna that eventually gives way to the Kalahari in the west of the country. So this one also kicks off in Johannesburg, and we usually spend our first morning exploring the Zaagkuilsdrift area north of Pretoria. Now, as many Gauteng birders know, there's days worth of exploring and birding to be done in this area alone. But again, time is limited. And on this route, we're pretty much just passing through. So we sort of have one shot of it, but you could always easily amend it to have a night in that area to explore it more fully. Our first proper overnight stop is in Polokwane. It's about 3 hours north of Johannesburg, where the Polokwane Nature Reserve is our birding venue. This is a lovely little reserve. It's a municipal reserve made up mostly of acacia thornveld, which can be a very productive habitat. Our main target here is the short-clawed lark, which is part of the long-billed lark complex and found only in South Africa and neighboring Botswana. If you look at the distribution slide there with those cluster of colored spots in the north of South Africa, that's around the Polokwane area. Okay, so this species, they like the areas of more open grassland, dotted with termite mounds. And if you spend a bit of time in these suitable areas, of course, especially early in the morning, you'll usually find them singing from atop an acacia shrub or a termite mound. Other species to look out for here include barred wren warbler, black-faced and violet-eared waxbill. Of course, then the violet-eared waxbill's root parasite, the shaft-tailed wider, tinkling cisticola, which appears to be uncommon. It's a bit of a bogey bird for me, that one. Crimson-breasted shrike, which is a real stunner with that bright red front. Kalahari scrub robin, ashy tit, Mariko and fiscal flycatchers, and many others that are typical of sort of Western South Africa, including, of course, a nice range of raptors. So moving on from Polokwane, our next stop is in the lush subtropical Soutpansberg range near the town of Louis Trichardt. The habitats here include forest and woodland, dams and pans. If you're not familiar with the term pan, it basically refers to a shallow, natural and often seasonal body of water, as well as rivers and agricultural lands of various types. There are quite a few specials in this area, and the best way to see these is with a local guide such as Samson Mulodzi, who will show you species such as blue-spotted wood dove, species with a very limited distribution in South Africa, African broadbill, bat hawk, African crowned eagle, white-backed night heron, African finfoot, Allen's gallinule, lesser moorhen, African pygmy goose, scaly-throated honeyguide, and others. And I see from Facebook, Samson's having quite a lot of luck lately with buff-spotted flufftail, which is a nice bird to see. Right, from the Soutpansberg, we make our way up to Mapungubwe National Park, which is located on the Limpopo River across from Botswana and Zimbabwe. This main slide shows what's called the Confluence View Site. If you're standing on that deck and you're looking towards the back right of the slide, you're looking into Zimbabwe, and towards the back center across that expanse of sandy riverbed, you're looking into Botswana. So it's right in that tri-national area. So it's a great park. It's very scenic with a rich cultural history, and it's always a pleasure to spend time in. There are no real specials here, in other words, birds that we can't see elsewhere on the route. But one of our prime species here is the elusive Pel's fishing owl, which is seen from time to time in the mature trees along the river in the Poacher's Corner area. But of course, it's by no means a sure thing, unfortunately. Other species we look out for here include tropical boo-boo, Meave starling, and Senegal kukul. These are species that are more common across the border, but don't occur much further south than the Limpopo River Valley in South Africa, as well as Marais parrot, broad-billed roller, Barrow's eagle. It's a very good park for Barrow's eagle. There's a high rock hyrax or dusty population to support them, and a range of other raptors. Okay, in terms of logistics, if you are visiting the park, if you can self-cater, there are some lovely camps within the park, which is actually and unfortunately divided into two separate sections, the east and the west, and no real direct linkage between the two, but both are definitely well worth spending some time in. But if you need catering, like we usually do on our group tours, then Mapani Bush Lodge is a good option. It's located not too far east of the main gate, just off the map here. But of course, it does entail a bit of commuting to and from the park, which is not ideal. Okay, moving on. Our next stop is undoubtedly one of the highlights of this Limpopo Northern Kruger route. It's Return Africa Camp in the Makuleki concession, which is the very far northern Kruger National Park, the little wedge of land between the Luvuvu and the Limpopo rivers. This is a restricted access area, so you have to be staying at one of the lodges. There's 3 or 4 lodges in the area, if that, to be able to access what is undoubtedly one of the most scenic parts of the Kruger. You've got the sandstone formations, a little bit similar to Mapungubwe, as well as these fantastic ancient baobab trees, that fever tree forest, the lazy rivers. It's just incredible scenery and habitat. And then the luxurious tents at Pafuri Camp overlooking the Luvuvu River are just exquisite. A real accommodation highlight. At night, you can lie in your tent and listen to the Pel's fishing owl calling along the river there. It's just superb. And the birding here in summer can be absolutely brilliant. It's definitely some of the best, if not the best, that the Kruger has to offer. At the top of our list, of course, is still the Pel's fishing owl. If we missed it at Mapungubwe, there's another shot at it here, as well as a range of species that are uncommon south of the Luvuvu River. These include 3-banded corsa, racket-tail roller. Still need to get my photograph of that species. R-nose chat, which is a mature Mapani felt specialist. Bomes and mottled spinetails, which are curious little swift-like birds, often found in association with baobab trees, as well as black-throated wattle-eye, Meave starling, and tropical boo-boo. Then there's some other species that are confined to the general north of the park, such as lemon-breasted canary, which is found in association with palms in the palm savanna, white-breasted cuckoo shrike, gray-headed parrot, and Dickinson's kestrel, among others. And in summer, when there's been a lot of rain, the area is great for water-associated birds, such as various herons, storks, waders, gallinules, crakes, moorhens, etc. So it's just superb, really, and staying in the Makuleki concession that gives you access to a number of species that are hard, or at least I find are hard to get from the public camps in the Kruger, such as Marais. You know, staying in the concession, you're right in the prime birding areas first thing in the morning to maximize those first 2 hours when birding's at its best. I find when you commute up from Marais, by the time you get to Pafuri picnic site or even Crook's Corner, the heat's already set in, and it's often you've missed the best part of the day there. So it's well worth staying in that area. Unfortunately, we have to drag ourselves away from Pafuri camp. We'll usually spend another 3 or 4 nights in the northern Kruger, meandering southwards, staying at camps such as Shinwedzi, Mapani, and Letaba. Okay, there aren't any super special birds here. In other words, birds that you can't see elsewhere, but it's just excellent general birding and game viewing. And it's a very nice overall natural history experience, as anyone who's been there will know. You can honestly spend weeks in the Kruger. Okay, leaving the Kruger, as the tour or the itinerary comes to an end, we'll head westwards and we'll have a final stop in the Magubus Kloof region, which is only about 150 kilometers away as the crow flies, but again offers a radically different habitat, as it's located in the eastern escarpment that runs down almost the whole eastern side of South Africa. And there's some large patches of Afro-montane forest, such as Woodbush Forest, which is probably the most well-known, which is what we'll focus on. Top of the list here is black-fronted bushshrike. Fortunately, I don't have a photo of that species yet, which has a very limited distribution in Southern Africa. And in South Africa is found only in this general area and at Mariepskorp a bit further to the south. And our other prime target here is the endemic Cape parrot, which is best seen in the early mornings from lookout points that give one a view over the forest canopy as they fly from their roosting sites to feeding areas. Okay, Bathawk is another exciting bird for the area, with several known roosting and nesting spots, often in the mature commercial plantations in the area. They seem to like these eucalyptus trees. And again, a local guide such as Paul Kumani or David Letsoala will seriously up your chances of finding it, plus all the other specials for the area. Excuse me, I was going to have another sip of water here. Right, from there, we'll make our way back to Johannesburg with a stop off at Nailsvlei Nature Reserve to finish things off. That's roughly about halfway between the two. Nailsvlei is one of South Africa's premier wetland birding sites, although the vast floodplain has been dry more often than not during the last 5 to 10 years, unfortunately, as we've been through quite a dry cycle. Hopefully that will change this summer or next summer at least. And it is flooded, however, or at least partially flooded. It holds an incredible array of water-associated species, making it one of South Africa's best wetland birding destinations. But even if it isn't flooded, it's still a worthwhile stop, offering some nice broadleaf woodland and acacia thornfelt habitat, even if the floodplain is dry. Species to look out for include barred wren warbler, tinkling cisticola, green-capped aeromomola, acacia pied barbet, orange-breasted waxbill, ashy tit, Kalahari scrub robin, and many others. Okay, so that wraps up our 3 different birding routes. But as a last point of discussion, I'd like to look at the seasons for birding in South Africa. Okay, South Africa is not tropical, so we do have distinct seasons, which obviously get more pronounced the further south you go. For most of the eastern part of the country, that includes a wet summer, an autumn, and a dry winter, and a short spring. Only the Cape is really different. The seasons there are reversed, with a wet winter and a dry summer. Okay, in eastern South Africa, the summers can be hot to very hot in places, while winters vary from mild to cold, or even very cold, depending on the place and the weather conditions at the time. That's mainly the high ground, like going up Sani Pass into Lesotho in winter can be extremely cold. So most of the country, including all the areas I've discussed here, fall into a summer rainfall regime, with rain generally falling between about September and October and April, May. Though with climate change and shifting patterns, it seems to be getting muddled up a bit. So far this year, we've had nice early rains. They started in September already. In some years, they only start well into November. So the start of the rainy season is generally when birds will turn their minds to breeding. Those with breeding plumages, such as the bishops and the widowbirds, will start putting on some color. Vocalization and general activity levels will also increase. I'm going to play this video now. If it works, it's a male Narina trogon calling in September during November, the start of the breeding season, when these birds and most others can be extremely active and therefore much easier to find. In fact, in this case, I think we had 3 calling from the same tree. Okay, then the migrants will start arriving, the intra-African migrants first. Though some, such as the yellow-billed kite, start arriving as early as late July. Some of the others, such as Wahlberg's eagle, from about August onwards. By full summer, that's roughly December, this time of year onwards. The area is green and lush. And even the Palearctic and the other migrants have arrived, although some, such as Ammer falcon, European roller, even the southern carmine beta arrive maybe mid-December onwards, so they're quite late arrivals. Okay, the verdant conditions continue through April, when one by one the migrants start disappearing. And by end of April, most of them have gone, bar a handful of intra-African migrants. Some of the cuckoos that may have fledged late are quite late to leave the area. May is generally still green, but by June, it's starting to dry out as the winter dry season sets in. And during winter, the higher ground becomes dry and very cold. So many bird species migrate downhill to lower altitudes. That for us makes some exciting local patch birding as the altitudinal migrants arrive. So you never know what you're going to find in winter. By September and October, it's getting warm again. Though some years it can be very dry if the rains come late, but then the general cycle repeats itself. So the prime birding season thus is summer, when the migrants are present and the birds are in breeding mode. Seeing a non-breeding long-tailed widowbird or southern red bishop is a far cry from seeing the breeding version. As you can see from that non-breeding yellow bishop in the bottom left picture there, during the off-season, they're basically just obscure brown birds. Nothing like the stunning breeding versions. That said, any time of the year can provide a rewarding birding experience. And for me, winter mornings in the savanna and the acacia thornfelt provide some of the most action-packed birding, with multi-species groups or bird parties moving around actively and starting to feed as the sun warms things up. Plus, the other advantage of winter is one doesn't have to get up quite so early. A 6:30 or 7 o'clock start is entirely reasonable, whereas in summer it can be as early as 4:30 in the morning. Right, I'm not sure how the time's going, but that basically concludes the 3 different birding routes, offering an incredible number and variety of bird species, including a large number of endemics and near-endemics. And in addition, the scenery, the general wildlife, the people, the food, and the culture combine to make an outstanding travel experience, whether you're from Paris or Pretoria. Now, these routes can be combined to create a comprehensive Eastern South African birding experience. You know, you can combine 2 of them, such as the first 2, to make a wonderful 3-week or just over 3-week experience. Or they can be broken up into smaller chunks, especially for the local birders, and done over a period of time, or chopped and changed as you see fit. The basic idea of this presentation was just to introduce this part of the world as a first-class birding destination, and to create some inspiration to get out there and go birding. And while international travel is obviously still down in the doldrums, South Africa has recently done away with all travel restrictions for inbound tourists, apart from the 72-hour negative COVID-19 test as an entry requirement. Our safety protocols are all up in place and extremely rigid. And of course, the vaccine's also imminent. So it's really a good time to start planning for a future trip, maybe in 2021 or 2022 down the line. Right, that's it. Thank you, everyone. I guess we have some time for any questions or comments if anyone would like to. Eric will have to tell me what I do now. I've never been on this side before.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Leon. This was a really, really excellent presentation. I don't know about other people, but I certainly enjoyed it. And having been to some of those places, you make me want to jump in my car tomorrow and start driving. So yeah, great stuff. We have a few questions that people have posted in the chat. And if anybody has other questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. Leon, maybe you can stop sharing your screen so people can see you on video when you answer the question.
All right.
I'll put my video on as well so people can see what the old fart is who's running things here this evening. So the first question is, and there's two questions that are similar, and they get to something that I thought as well when I was listening to you talk, and that is that you really do a good job of bringing up the local guides, because I think they're critical to a really good birding experience, especially when you're traveling around and you have limited time. So Letitia's question is, would it be possible to provide a list of all the area specials mentioned in the presentation and the recommended guides? Yeah. Sorry, then the other question that is related to that is a similar one from Roxanne saying, I would like to know the names of the various guides recommended in the various areas.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. As far as the guides go, the best place to look is on the BirdLife South Africa website. You look under local guides and they list them by province, and they've got all their contact details there. So yeah, BirdLife South Africa takes care of that. They obviously do a wonderful job of promoting the local guides. As far as a list of all the areas and specials, I certainly can. If you want to email me on Lawson's, leon@lawsons-africa.co.za, or just Google Lawson's Birding and you'll get to our website. You can get hold of me and I'm happy to do that. I'll write them up and supply them for you.
And then Cassia says, many thanks, Leon. Looking forward to spending time locally enjoying these areas. Joe says, great presentation, brings back fond memories. I hope to return. Naomi says, thanks a lot, Leon and Lawson's awesome presentation. And Ida says, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. I'm not seeing any other questions. If anybody has another question, feel free to pop it in the chat. We'll hang on for another minute or so.
Yeah, if you don't want to do it now, or you even just for some general info, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to share some knowledge just to promote birding in South Africa. That's the main thing.
And if you can't remember how to get a hold of Leon, you can always mail support@learnthebirds.com, and I will make sure that that he gets the message. So I think we will finish up for the evening then, and I would invite people to attend the Birding in the Snow webinar next week on the 10th of December. I think it's going to be a fantastic presentation as well about a part of the world that's quite far from here. And in our summer, it's hard to imagine snow, but it's going to be an interesting presentation to wind the year down with as we come up to the holiday season. See, there's one more question from Elizabeth saying, is there such a thing as a cinnamon bee eater?
I think there is, but not in our region. I'm just checking on the app here quickly for East Africa. Yeah, there's a cinnamon chested in East Africa. But yeah, they're not in our part of the world anyway.
She says she saw one near Kruger.
Okay, that's interesting.
Hopefully there's a photograph.
Yeah, photos, that's what it's all about with rarities.
And then Andrew says, thanks, we really enjoyed virtually visiting some of South Africa's top birding spots. Really enjoyed the presentation. Lots of people are saying thank you. Cassia says it's like our little bee eater.
Yeah, I think so. Cinnamon breasted.
And yep. Anything else from anybody before we close down for the evening? I think people have enjoyed the presentation, Leon. So hopefully next year we can do another one.
I hope so. Yeah, definitely chat to you about that.
Someone's asking, is the presentation recorded? Hopefully, with Zoom, you have to cross your fingers and hope. It has been recording. It's set to record to the cloud. So what I will do is either probably take over the weekend, because I have a day job as well. And then I'll put it up on our YouTube channel, which is learnthebirds.com/YouTube. And you will find it there.
No, that'll be excellent. Thanks, Derek.
It's a little bit of editing to get it ready for putting up to YouTube, because there's a lot of stuff at the beginning and stuff that you have to remove. So just give us a few days to get it up there.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And thanks, Leon. And thanks, everybody, for attending. And hopefully we'll see you on Learn the Birds again.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And good night.